Look, there's a great jobs report, but does that mean that the economy is in great shape? No, not necessarily. Not necessarily at all. It just means there was a great jobs report. But the great jobs report will then turn into an interest rate hike by the Fed. So how did that help you? Not sure it did. A lot of things going on. Terry Sawchuk here, founder of Sawchuk Wealth. He's here for market analysis, inflation evaluation, and a quick look at the State of the Union as well. Terry, good to have you as always, my friend.
Good morning, Steve. Good to see you, buddy.
Well, I heard we're giving away more free stuff at the State of the Union. In fact, college should just be free start to bottom, start to finish now, among other things, and other handouts and other earned income child tax credits, which really is a government handout. What did you see in the State of the Union? What have you seen this week in the economy? What are you seeing in America in general? Give me your take on it, Terry.
Judging from what I've seen at the university level, I would say it sounds like you get what you pay for right now, eh, buddy?
Yeah, that's about right, yeah. So, what do you think?
I'm not going to get too hung up on Biden's speech. It's propaganda partially. And I don't believe fundamentally in any of the policies that they're espousing. So I'm going to pretend like it didn't exist for a while.
A lot of people do that with Joe Biden.
It's gotten to the point where he's unwatchable, right? Because he's either like can't pronounce words, like clearly enunciate anything, or he's yelling at people. He goes from one to the other, and it's just not believable.
It doesn't instill confidence in any of us, does it? It does not instill confidence in any of us, and you look at people's optimism about the economy, it's very low. People expect a recession. And when they say, well, everything's fine, people that are making well over $100,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck right now. I mean, things are getting tough.
There's a few things here, Steve. So one, if you're making $100,000 and you're living paycheck to paycheck, that's not an income problem, that's a spending problem. Okay. But that aside, if you look at the big picture, they were saying this, and I'm not drawing the analogy and saying we are right now where we were in 2007, but I will tell you that heading into the end of 2007, the Federal Reserve said everything was fine. Ben Bernanke said everything was fine. So I don't know that they're the most credible source on that topic. As far as the jobs report is concerned, yes, they created apparently 500,000 jobs, but they're not engineering jobs. These are not lawyers and doctors. These were mostly service sector jobs. And my guess is in a few months that'll be revised down. And what your point of earlier is exactly right, Steve, is that the jobs report, and it's interesting because on one hand you had this 500,000 increase in jobs, but on the other hand, every day we're getting more and more announcements of companies that are laying people off. So the jobs report's a bit lagging, and I think as we head into the second half of the year, what you're going to find is that Fed policy is probably going to go too far, and it's going to exacerbate more difficult conditions.
So how do we avoid? It just looks every place you look right now. Every place you look, it's an acceleration of the approach to complete government control of everything. I saw a story this week where Joe Biden had, with an executive order, had taken away 20,000 acres in northern Minnesota to do any sort of mining, right? Mining for metals that we need, copper and selenium and a whole bunch of other things, right, that we need in northern, off limits for 20 years. Thousands and thousands of acres. And you see that. Yeah, you're closing down the lobster fishermen in Maine. You're closing down access to land in America for oil and gas, research and everything else. And then you see more and more government control. I just don't know how we try to put the brake on it, Terry. We talk about it here. And yet it continues to go on and on and on, despite what we talk about, despite the protests and the people saying, no, we can't do this. They introduced books into schools to give kids the impression that America is a terrible place. Disney runs cartoons about how racist we all are and everything else. How do we stop all this?
Well, there's a few things in my head, Steve. First of all, I've spent a lot of time looking through social media because there are some really smart financial people that are very generous with what they share. And so that's why I do it. But the truth of the matter is I have to sift through a lot of garbage right, to get to the nuggets of gold. One of the things that I've personally decided is I'm not going to perceive anything anymore from the perspective of right, left, Republican, or Democrat, because what's happened is all of that has gotten so polarized that once any of those words are uttered, people on the other side just filter everything out. They don't even listen anymore. That's how we've been conditioned to think. From my perspective, what I want to know is what's right, what's wrong, what's moral or ethical, and does it appear to be true? And what are your policies? So I don't want to talk about people anymore. I want to talk about policies that are going to move the needle. And if you look at the policies that are coming out of Washington right now, if you were to write down every way that you could think of to undermine the United States' sovereignty, its economic superiority relative to the rest of the world, its military superiority to the rest of the world, and you wanted to start doing things that would undermine all that, that is exactly what's coming out of Washington right now. And so at some point, you have to stop thinking that these people are inept, and you have to start thinking that maybe there's something more going on than what meets the eye.
I've thought that for a long time. I think it's by design. You can't have a southern border that's wide open with them. Oh, it's fine. The border's not fine. I was in Florida here last weekend. I mentioned this to a couple people. I'm in Central Florida. And there's a lot of work to be done there. There's citrus groves and construction and concrete plants and so forth. But all I saw in this area were groups of 4, 5, 6 Hispanic men, military age, all walking in groups together, all not looking like they're doing anything, going back and forth to stores, going back and forth to these little hotels and trailers they're staying at. And I'm thinking, wow, Florida got its fair share of those that came across the border. I mean, because it's quite clear. And I went into a Walmart there. Nobody spoke English, and it has nothing to do with race or racism. It has to do with an observation of what's happening to the country because you've got a wide open border. Oh, and by the way, newsflash, there's been a 1,000% increase in Chinese nationals being picked up at the border. Huh. Why are all the Chinese people coming here? To help us? Do you think so? I'll give you the last word.
It's difficult to ascertain. I understand the anecdotal
Not
perspective
really.
of that. Well, from my perspective, Steve, that this all starts and it starts and ends with taking back control of the media apparatus. And I'm not talking about just television. I'm talking about social media. I'm talking about print media. We need true diversity of opinion. We need ideas to be put out. The reason that all of this has been able to happen is because the entire media complex, and again, it's more than just television.
It's all lined up against us. Silence me, silence you, promote what they want and silence what they don't want to hear for the World Economic Forum, for the folks in Davos, all of them and everybody else, United Nations and everybody. Terry, I got to leave it there. Terry Sawchuk, always appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Good to see you, my friend.
Always.